Fantastic. Well, everyone's ready to go? Ready, Eddie? Who's Eddie? Wonderful. That's good. I'm having issues. I can't see through my glasses. Is everyone there? Where are we going? Sorry, excuse me for a moment. Get all excited and fogged up. Things get pretty hot up here, you know. Awesome. Well, I just wanted the opportunity. We're going to talk this month about the stream flowing from the temple. So we had our a prophet and also an apostolic figure for our church, Pastor Murray Newman, here last week, and gave a distinct message, a prophetic message to the church out of Ezekiel 47. And the vision that Ezekiel had at the end of his life. Ezekiel was a prophet in the Old Testament, and this month we're going to get an opportunity to have a look at that vision that he had and his prophetic work, who he is and the time that was done. I just sense that, the interesting thing is, this is not something new. Actually, before I came to King Roy, after Joe and I accepted the offer to come and be the spiritual leader of this place, I had 3 people prophesy. Two people that spiritual leaders and coaches in my world, and one a young man who I discipled while I was in as a drug and alcohol counsellor worker at Teen Challenge in Toowoomba, and he had been gloriously saved and delivered from drug and alcohol, and went out onto the mission field to serve God, and a great young man of faith. And they all prayed and prophesied the same thing, that the ministry that we would lead would be a waterfall ministry that would create streams into the districts and the areas and the geographical areas that where we were planted. And so when Pastor Murray Newman last weekend, prophesied that we would be like, there would be rivers. It would start as a stream from the temple of water that would start at ankle deep, and then it would turn into knee deep, and it would go waist deep, and then it would become a great river that couldn't even be crossed, and then a whole group of it would bear fruit. It would become like an oasis in the desert. And in fact, the vision over the next coming month, we'll have a bit of a look at that vision. But first of all, I'd like to talk about the biblical world around that before we actually go into the nature of the vision, because I think it's really important for us to understand context. And so I want to bring context to that today. And today, I think Ezekiel, in the book of Ezekiel and the prophet Ezekiel, prophesies to us just by who he is and what he was going through. You see, for Ezekiel, the whole world really had fallen apart. His world had fallen apart. And I guess today, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but there's times in my life where I just feel like I thought it was all together. I thought everything was happening, and I thought I had it all together. And then from the left corner and from the right corner, and from close and from far away, I think I was just sort of losing my grip on things, losing my ability to sort of have control and influence, and think, it's sort of, when it falls apart, what happens next? Well, what do you do? I don't know, maybe your marriage fell apart. I don't know, maybe things fell apart for you at work. Maybe your best friend at school, that friendship with your best friends, maybe that just fell apart. Maybe your relationship with your mum or your dad, just, the closeness of it that you had, something came in and it deconstructed it, came to destroy that, and it's apart. It's not like it was before. Well, what do you do next? What do you do next? And I think Ezekiel is going to be a great encouragement to the church as we unpack the prophecy from one of my spiritual leaders and coaches, Pastor Murray, and a prophet to this church. And so we're going to discuss that more. First of all, I wanted to start with this because we're going to learn about the times of Ezekiel. But I want to say something about Ezekiel first. Ezekiel, prophet who lived 500 to 600 years before Jesus comes on the scene. So we're talking, we're talking 2.5 centuries ago. Ezekiel's saying, we're talking ancient times. And Ezekiel is he hasn't started his prophetic life, but he is part of the priesthood. His lineage is as a priest to the nation, to the Israelites in the land of Judah. And what happens in that time is very interesting. But first of all, I just want to start with his name. So his name, if you can see it up there, I'm not even going to pretend that I can say Hebrew names. It represents either an affirmation of faith, like this, God strengthens. That's affirmation, right? God strengthens! 2 amens. Or an appeal of faith. May God strengthen you. So his parents, it shows something of his lineage. His parents already knew. They already had something in their spirit about Ezekiel. They already had something in their spirit about Ezekiel when they named him. They named him thinking, well, this young child, he's going to strengthen the nation of Israel, but he's also going to need the strength of it. I don't know what is sort of better, like if you're naming your child, God strengthens, it's sort of like he's going to need it. In other words, there's going to be a great trial come. There's going to be some mountain before him. Something's going to happen. Because what's coming next, friend, he's going to need the strength of God. He's going to need the strength of God. So, the nature of prophecy in the Old Testament, I just want to talk about we'll talk about the nature of Ezekiel 47 and the last prophecies and visions of Ezekiel's life, which they are restorative prophecies. All right, so before that, in the book of, right at the beginning of Israel, you see the prophecies written down about his calling. So when you read the book of, and this month would be a great month. If you would like to read the book of Ezekiel, you'll have great insight and study the book, and you'll have great insight to what we're going to talk about this month. But it starts out with Ezekiel's call. God speaks to him. That's the nature of prophecy. God speaks to Ezekiel, and he has to listen. He then goes on, he struggles with that call. There's these prophecies of that are a bit rebellious, that are a bit, and then there is prophecies of judgment. The prophecies of judgment declare what it looks like. It declares how it is. It's not a judgment that, these judgments are like, it's declaring this is the state of the matter. It's not about smiting thee to hell prophecy. It's about just saying, this is the real deal. This is despite what you can see with your natural eye, this is the condition and state of man. This is the condition and state of your heart, of your mind, and this is the condition of the outflow and working and behavior and words of your life. And so there's prophecy. There's prophecy over his people, the Israelites, and he prophesies to them. But he also prophesies to the nations and to the people who come into contact with the Israelite people, who are Ezekiel's people, who are the Yahweh's, the God of creation, his people, a covenant people. In other words, they're people promised. They've come across a God who's a promise giver and a promise keeper. But the interesting thing about prophecy and this restoration is that Ezekiel, in the end of his life, comes to see a great revelation and picture of what God wants to bring back, what he wants to restore in his people, in his life, in the people around him, in his nation. And he sees this beautiful vision. So the nature of prophecy is this, right? It's rhetorical. What does rhetorical mean? It's persuasive. So when Ezekiel writes this, he's trying to persuade the people, the listeners, those who would hear. It's persuasive. It wants you to change your thinking and change your actions and change your behavior. And so when we reject prophecy, it's often because we're not ready to face what we are thinking and what we want to change now. But we just want it to be the status quo. We just want to be, just leave me alone. I've got the way I've been raised well. I've got it good. Listen, I've got a job. I've got people who care for me. I dress well. People think I dress well. I'm good looking. I'm talking of you. I'm not talking of me. And you can say those things. But the nature of prophecy comes and is looking to persuade you. And so Ezekiel's prophetic ministry comes to speak the word of God to the people, but it's not for the people to stay where they're at. And so last weekend, the prophet's job, Pastor Murray, and I'd encourage you, if you didn't see it, go get the. No, you're looking on YouTube these days, don't you? Go online to Highway Church's YouTube account. You go see it there. It was to shake us up. We talked about it. It's like, have you ever put a shirt on the wrong way? Have you? Or for me, it's like the jump. You got the V-neck jumper. Have you ever put a V-neck jumper on the wrong way, like the V-neck at the back, and it creeps up on your neck? I don't know if you've done that, but I've done that, and you put it on, and it's like there's something wrong, And I don't know about you. Maybe I need to look in the mirror more, but I don't look in the mirror, right? Because I don't have to brush my hair. So there's no need to look in the mirror. And so I walk out into the lounge room, right, with my stuff on wrong. And my wife has a number of times said, oh, your shirt's inside out. And I'm like, it's just a pain in the neck. But the nature of prophecy shakes it up a bit. And my heart and desire, not because I want to see you hurt, but it's because I want to see the Spirit of God breathe into your life, that last weekend you just felt a bit uncomfortable. And it's so good to have Pastor Murray do it, because he just smiles and loves you. And literally just wakes up in the morning and his first prayer is, how can I love people today? And then he goes about prophesying, and I sort of question him about that. I'm like, you love us, but then you say this stuff to me. What? Beautiful. Now Ezekiel. So Ezekiel, remember Daniel? Remember the story of Daniel who gets taken off into... Daniel is at the same time as Ezekiel. So Daniel in the lion's den. So the Babylonians live not far away from Judah, in the same area of the world, and they rise to power very quickly. In that part of the world, for hundreds and hundreds of years, the Assyrians have been the big people on the block. They're like the Romans of Jesus' day. And the Assyrians are just conquerors. They've conquered that area for many, 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 many years. And they've conquered Babylon many, many times. But out of Babylon comes an incredible military leader, an incredible leader of the people. And Babylon rises very quickly in a military campaign to take over the then known world. And unfortunately, the land of Judah, which is the nation of Israel, they're just around the corner and they get in the way. And so the Babylonians, on their way to dominate that area, they go. And unfortunately, between Babylon and Egypt, where Babylon wanted to really smash the Egyptians and overcome them, what lies in the way between Babylon and Egypt is the land of Judah, is the Israelites. And so Babylon is prospering. And it's becoming a big deal in the world. And they have taken over Jerusalem. They've taken over Judah, all the Jewish people. And what they did when they conquered that land, they take all the important people, all the kings and the royalty and all the line of who's important in that country, and they bring them back to their cities, and they literally re-educate them and bring them into their culture. And their idea is to, is to strip them of their nationality and their religion, and their ideas, and assimilate them into their society. Because more people in their society mean more workers, means a more prosperous city. It means more prosperous, it brings work and economy and people to the place. It makes for a big nation. And so that's where we see in the stories of the Bible of Daniel, he gets taken out because we know Daniel is in the royal court. And Ezekiel, as one of the lines of the priest, him and his lot get caught up in this. And they get basically taken away from their homeland and get plonked straight in to the area and the empire of Babylon. Now for the Israelites, for the Jewish people, right, this is bad. Do you think that's bad? Like, you're doing your thing, you're serving the Lord, you're loving God. Ezekiel is just sort of he's one of the young sort of priests coming up, sort of really hasn't taken shape yet, hasn't begun ministering in the temple, but he knows all about how the Jews worship, and he's sort of, because he's in the family, it's like the carpenters, mightn't be a carpenter yet, but you know how to bang wood together. His life is just about to start. He's hanging out in the big capital. He's in Jerusalem. He's doing all of that. And then suddenly, he gets taken as a captive, as a slave, have all his rights removed, have everything taken away from him and plonked in a foreign land. Wow. So now there's the big four for the Jewish people. Let's talk about the big four important things in regards to their relationship. What's the big four? I don't know what the big four important things for you are in life, but maybe it's getting a house. Is that important to you? Is the big four one of them getting a house? I don't know what the big four. Find a wife. Maybe that'd be a good thing. Find a wife. What's another big four? Get a job, good job, maybe. Pay for your funeral when you get a bit older. You thinking about that? Yeah, okay. Maybe it's the nest egg for retirement. Saving up all that money so when you're 68 or 70 or how old you're going to be now, probably 85, you might be able to save it and spend it. For the Jewish people, the big thing was that, God had given them the land of Canaan to become their home. It was about, remember they come out of Egypt? Oh, they come out of Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt. And God said, I'm going to give you something better than Egypt. I'm going to give you a whole land. There's people there, they're called Canaanites, but we're going to get rid of them. You're going to get rid of them, and I'm going to give you the best land in the world. It's going to be full of resources like you've never. He's a good God. He's taken me. He's going to take me from, he's going to take me from Melbourne to Queensland. He's going to the promise, not just Queensland, but to Nanango. We're going to the promised land, baby. That was one of his promises that he gives his people. I'm going to give you a land. But before he got to that, one of the greatest things, one of the most biggest important things is this. It's for the Jew, is we got the real God, mate. We got the real God. All of you other people, all your funny other gods that you got, none of them. We don't want any of them. We got the one true God. And not only have we got the one true God, he came and spoke to the biggest daddy of them all, Abraham, in the Jewish people. And he came and he promised our granddaddy Abraham that we not only would he be the one God for us, but we would be his people. And for the Jewish person, that covenant or that agreement, that agreement that there's going to be one God and he was going to be our God. All you other nations, you got the fake, we got the real deal. Right? We got the real deal. And we're going to be blessed. You see, God's a promise giver. And he called to Abraham and he said, Abraham, I'm going to have an agreement with you. This is an agreement. I'm going to be your God. See, he's looking around. Oh, well, all these other nations, they've got all these other gods, but they don't seem to be doing too well. They don't fare well. They're serving them all and they're doing all sorts of stuff to all these gods. And who knows what's going to, their lives are, whether you serve that one or that one, it seems to fall apart anyway. What do I do next? And Abraham was in a bit of a situation. His life was like, well, what do I do next? And God says, don't worry, I'm your God, and I'm going to come and I'm going to bless you. Not only am I going to bless you, right? Not only am I going to make your life favorable amongst the whole other nations, but you are going to be blessed. You are going to be blessed. You're going to have my favor. You see, that's why everyone had all the other gods. They were like, we got a God for coming and going, and we got a God for eating, and we got a God for drinking, and we've got a God for sex, and we've got a God for all areas of your life, for your farming. We got a God for increase. We've got a God for fertility. We've got a God for everything. And when we need something, we go there and we try and plead with that God for some favor. And he says to Abraham, you don't have to worry about all that. You got one God, and you got his favor. You got his favor. You got his favor. You got one God and you got his favor. Not only that, he's a God of promise. Let me tell you, he's a God of promise. Because listen to this, Genesis 12, 2-3. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Not only will I bless you, but if you go around putting favor on other people, they will have my favor. That's the promise of God. And then he goes on to say, the next promise is this, the promised land. Exodus 3:8. Why a land? Listen, so I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. They'll all be yours. I'm giving all that stuff to you. Why? Why the land? Why his promised land? Because his people need a place. His people have a place. He's ordained it that his people have the place. See, the Jews know this is my land. God has given me this land. God has given me this land. Why? Because we are his people and we are blessed. See, their promise, the promise of a Jew, the first one was the covenant, one God. It was the agreement, he's going to be my God and I'm going to have his favor. The next one was the land. I'm going to have land. I'm his child. He's going to bless me with a place that we can be the people of God together. We are the people of God. They were in the same land. We are the people of God. That was his promise. That not only he'd be his God, but we would be his people. And he'd put us in a place in the world where people would know who we are. We still know Jews today because the Jews received the promises of God. They're still out and about doing his work today, thousands of years later. What was the next promise? It was the promise of his presence. Moses comes along. What? You remember Moses? Moses is that mountain man. That's what I remember, okay? Moses up the mountain. God gives Moses a promise. He's up the mountain. And he comes face to face with the presence of God. Comes down the mountain, has to put cloth all over his head. It said when he was in the presence of God, his face was so shiny. It was full of the glory of God. It was full of the presence that he met with God. And from there come the promise through Moses that the presence of the one true God would be amongst his people. See, that was the third fundamental being a Jew. He knew the presence of God is going to come to my people. The presence of God then came to the people with the Ark of the Covenant. And then the Ark of the Covenant, this is a really quick theology lesson, right? And the Ark of the Covenant, we won't go into that, but it was like just an ark, and it went to this place called the tabernacle, giant tent. And in a secret, in a small place in the middle of that tent, they put the ark. And the ark had the presence of God. And they would come and meet. And the priest, that was the role of the priest. See, the priest would then go into the presence of God and go back to the people and say, well, God said. You see, when God said something to Moses, what happened next? Moses went to the people. He has called the Israelite, a Jewish person, always to be the voice of the one true God. They would go into his presence, the priests. Okay, this is what God says, everybody. Later on, the presence came into the temple. Let's do these two scriptures. You'll be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They brought the presence of God. What's a priest? A priest is an intermediary. An intermediary? Yep. It's someone who would stand in between. Hey, what did you say? Okay. Yeah, this is what he said. They would bring the offerings to God and bring the worship to God and go back to the people and say, this is what God said. This is of the temple, right? So after the tabernacle, they'd gone into the promised land. King David, you know the King David story? King David is mighty, a mighty warrior. And the promises of God came to King David. And King David's son, what's his name? Who made the temple? Solomon. Solomon made a temple. And instead of having the big tent tabernacle, they put the ark into the temple, right? This is so important for the Jewish people. We have to understand this. When the priests withdrew from the holy place, that's the innermost part of that temple, the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled this temple. The presence of God. See, the Jews, the third real important thing as they knew is, hey, our God hangs out with us. His presence is in the temple. Oh, if you would just try, you just go near that thing. And if you haven't done the right thing, the priests haven't done the right, if you touch that thing, squash. You're kaput. They understood, hey, we got the presence of God with her. All your other prophets and all your other gods, whoop-de-doo. Ours lives in our home, in our place where we live and reside. Oh, and David says how great it was that I went up to the temple in Jerusalem. Why? Because he was going up to be with Jesus, going up to be with God, going up to be with his God, the one true God. He was so loved the presence of God. No, I've got to go to church. Oh, you don't need to go to church. David was like, get out of my way, mate. I'm the first there. The last fourth thing, the real important fundamental of being a Jew, is the promise of a king. 2 Samuel, this is the promise. When he's talking to David, King David. King David was the first, well, he was really the second king of Israel, but he was the king that God would choose to establish his eternal kingdom through. After Saul, this is David. God speaking through the prophet Nathan to David. He says, when your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, when you're dead, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. Solomon was the greatest king, ruled over the greatest area geographically and politically of the Jewish nation ever. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Forever, forever, forever. You see, this is where Ezekiel was at. The Babylonian army, even the land of Judah, wasn't worshipping the one true God. There was a small group of people still and priests still serving in the temple, but the nation had sought after the gods of other people around them and taken on those gods and brought them into their homes and taken on people from with other ideas and other religion, other nations and faiths, and brought them in, and they weren't doing that. But what happened when Babylon come in? They took Ezekiel and they took him away. They took him away into Babylon, where they wouldn't acknowledge the one God. And he was devastated. Not only that, the Babylonian army came and they took them away from the land that God had promised them. Ezekiel was living in the promises. He was living in the promises. But they'd taken away the promise. And as he was getting taken away, they subdued the king. And they took the king of the land of Judah and they brought him into captivity. And what they did to the kings in humiliation, and then would put another king in place who would do as he's told, but then he wouldn't. So they'd give him a rough time and hurt him, and then the kings were taken away into captivity. And it's like, well, where is our future, God? What are you doing right now? I can't see. It seems this is all falling apart at the seams. This hope and this fear, these promises, God. But not only that. You see, when the king of the Babylonian Empire, he took everyone away, he would put one of the sons of the king in place and say, hey, your dad was not a good boy. He wasn't doing as we wanted him to do. I'll put you in there and you do as you're told. You'll rule those people. You'll rule the Jewish people, but you'll do it the way I want it. They call it a vassal king. They only rule instead for the Babylonian Empire and the king, right? And these Jewish kings, mate, the Jewish king didn't like that. So the Babylonian king decided this: I've had enough of you lot. And they took a great Babylonian army and they went into Jerusalem, the capital, where the big temple is, and they literally blew the thing to the ground. They razed it to the ground. They burnt it to the ground. There was nothing left, the historic counts say, and the archaeology. It was just rubble. And Ezekiel saw it, and he was like, now where do we go for his presence? Now even the promise of his presence has been robbed for his people. you reckon you got a hard luck story? All of the most important things of his life were removed from his life. I don't know what's happening in your life right now. I do. Some of you, I do know what's going on in your life. And some of the, like I like to stand with you like, yeah, it's like, what's going on? How did it come? How did it come to this? But friends, let me tell you, that's not the end of the story. The next couple of weeks in this month, we're going to talk about where the story goes for them. But what I want to tell you is your story isn't done yet. This story isn't done yet because God is speaking to his people. And God has fulfilled a promise. And he sent his son Jesus into the world. He sent his son Jesus. About 2,500 years ago, Ezekiel was in a hurting place. I'm not sure, maybe you may be in a place like that today. But let me tell you, friend, he's done it once. He can do it again. Here's a restorer God. Here's a restorer God. Here's a promise filler God. And although you might be where you are at yet, or although you might be on the precipice of something, God is saying, hold on a sec, because here comes something that you haven't thought of yet. Here comes something that I haven't done yet. I've got some healing coming for you. I've got some deliverance coming for you. I've got a place of healing. I've got a place of provision. I've got a place of purpose. I've got a place where you can become everything I've designed you to be, because the enemy wants to try and take you out, but I'm not going to let you be taken out because you're one of my people. You're one of my people. He has made a covenant through his son Jesus that all be saved who call upon him. Jesus fulfills every one of those things. Well, if you don't feel like you belong anywhere, if you feel like you're disjointed, friend, you can come into the kingdom of God right now. He never meant for you to be alone. He never meant for you to be outside of a personal relationship with his son Jesus. And you might feel like you've been on the outer. You may even had everything taken from you, or you may have everything. I don't know where you are, but friend, I've seen it in both. I've seen people that have everything and seen people who have nothing. And in the midst of it all, what purpose do you have, friend, unless you really know who you are designed by and that there is a true God? We all have to come to terms with it. There is one true God, and his name is Jesus. Why don't we stand together? At the end of his life, Ezekiel saw the pouring out from a temple, but it just wasn't a physical place. He had a spiritual vision of the Jerusalem temple, and he saw the waters of life flow from it. He had a vision of it. He wasn't anywhere near it. It had been destroyed. All his hopes and dreams, I think sometimes in the journey of life, friend, what you have come to know and what we've built up life to be, sometimes there comes a shaking in our world. Ezekiel's life was shaken to bits. It was deconstructed. It was pulled apart bit by bit. But then he came to a place in the midst of that, and he saw it in his, he spiritually saw it in his mind, in his eyes. And he said, I actually see a temple, although it doesn't exist. I see a place. I see the presence of God. I see it from the presence of God. I see the flow of life of the presence of God go into the nation, into Nanango, into your home, into your work, into your marriage, into your situation. He saw the flow of God, and it was going to bring life. And the Spirit of God is prophesying to the South Burnett, to you and your home and your people. He's saying there's a flow coming from the presence of God. And it's going to overflow and it's going to pour out in the name of Jesus. So we're just going to go into that place of the presence of God in worship. Come to Him. Worship is what? Bringing something to it. When a Christian worships, we bring all our hopes and our dreams and our person and what we are and our thoughts and our actions, and we say, here I am, God. Speak, Lord. Here I am, God. I bring myself to you. I bring my praise. I bring my worship. I bring my song of love. I bring my song. I bring my hurts and I bring my pains and I bring everything that I thought of. I just bring it all to you. Let's bring it to Him in worship.
Holy Spirit's here with us. He's flooding this place. The churches are being filled. There is revival in the air. It's here with us now. People are getting excited again about Jesus. He loves us. And we need to be filling ourselves with Him and then going out and just letting that flow out from us to everyone that we come in touch with, in the shops, in work, in our family, everyone. Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's great to be in the presence of Jesus with you. And we're going to have a time now. We just love church part 2. So church isn't over. And we're going to go out and have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, maybe some little nibblies, if your diet allows for you to have little nibblies. But the best thing is just to hang out with someone, talk with someone, take that blessing that's upon your life